Beep.
Hey, good morning, guys. Happy Friday to you. Getting ready for a weekend. It is officially, I wish I could show you, I guess. It is, I don't know, Rachel, are you getting snow out there where you are?
It's gorgeous. I was just telling Dan there. It is,
I mean,
it looks like a snow globe outside my house. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, we're at that level where it covers everything right now.
Yeah.
And for those of you not in the DC area, it's amazing. Like literally, it's not that much snow, and it's just like the entire city will be shut down for 4 days.
I was going to say, are schools canceled today? Is it
not every school, but you can see the little crawl on the TV that is like 15-hour delay.
Yeah, there's definitely delays. There's definitely delays. And my daughter, who sings "Do You Want to Build a Snowman" like 50 times a day, is going to have a fun time when she gets back from.
I don't know. My good friend Tucker Barnes over at Fox 5 is not so sure that this
not good packing snow.
No, it's just not going to hold. I mean, you think about the ground's not that warm yet. So I hope maybe you could bottle some up for her.
Okay.
Well, we'll have another opportunity later this winter.
Yeah. Okay. It is Friday. A lot going on. I was out a little last night, guys. The FIFA buzz.
Sean, it's been a busy week for you. Holiday season. Like you're on the circuit.
I'm in demand, Dan. I got.
Are your feet hurting? Like every night, do your feet like just hurt because you're just going to so many events right now?
Listen, no. I just to be clear, like I'm an Instagram like I go to one thing and I post it all week. Like I've been.
All right. Okay.
But I will say the talk of FIFA last night at some events, everybody was excited. I told you my FIFA parking story yesterday, but this event today, I mean, Tom Brady's going to be there. I think Sly Stallone. I mean, like they really have done it up.
Shaq. Yeah.
I talked to Grinnell last night for a little while. Rick Grinnell, the guy who runs the Kennedy Center, and it is a heck of a job they're doing putting this thing on. And I know there's the venue. But what Rick and his team, Roma and everyone over there has done is fantastic.
And you got to remember, like this is the world's biggest sport. A lot of fans, as soon as this is posted and they know where their team's games are, going to start buying airline tickets, reserving hotels. Like for the rest of the world and a lot of Americans, like this is a huge deal.
Oh yeah, you think about it.
Start, by the way.
What?
When does it start?
Oh my God!
Summer.
This summer. It starts. I think the second week, third week.
And all over. So you've got Mark Carney from Canada in town today.
Yeah,
you've got
Canada, Mexico, and the US.
Right? Because it's going to be on all three countries. So like this is an actual, not just a sports thing, but obviously we mentioned some of the cultural aspects of it. Andre Bocelli in today. I'll mention that.
The Village People.
The Village People. What says soccer and international fame like the Village People? Yeah. But anyway, that's going to be a big thing for DC folks, for soccer folks.
Yeah.
And then obviously there's going to be a lot of economic data dropping today. And the reason I think this is going to be important is because the shutdown, a lot of this data didn't come out. A lot of it's lapsed. So getting a clearer picture of the economy.
That inflation number is going to be big, right? Because the Fed's meeting soon. So again, the idea of whether or not they're going to, lower interest rates. So that inflation number is one everyone's going to have a pretty close eye on.
Yeah, and I think the funny thing is the expectation, at least, is another quarter point cut. So it's like a double-edged sword. You don't want the economy to look too good if you're Trump and you want the cuts, but you do need it. So it's going to be interesting. But
you need it to look good for the midterms. That's for damn sure.
Well, but you want that rate cut. I mean, like that's the bottom line. And so you might want to take a bad report today to get you a good rate cut in a couple.
Well, if inflation is ticking back up, though, the problem is now they're in a bind. Because if you cut, you're fueling inflation, but you're helping with employment. And this is the trap that they are trying desperately to avoid.
Yeah. But so, we'll see the economic data come out. And obviously, like I said, the really tricky thing for politicians is you got to be careful what you wish for because it might, be cutting yourself off. There's some political activity. The Democratic Governors Association will be meeting. Is it starting to meet today?
Yeah, the DGA, they'll pick their new chair. Like you're probably wondering why.
New vice chair, right?
It's the vice chair,
vice chair.
Right.
Well, no, I think they're picking the chair and the vice chair. I think that's the thing.
Oh, I thought the chair was already chair, was going to be chair, and then Whitmer as vice. I could be wrong, though.
Okay, I thought it was going to be Whitmer. And like the reason this is big is it gives her an excuse to go campaign around the country for her colleagues. It lets her raise money, under the auspice of helping colleagues. But of course, there happen to be gubernatorial races in several states coming up that will likely be early in the primary calendar. And it just gives her an excuse to get out there and campaign more next year.
Yeah. Well, the president's going to be getting, doing some closed press. He's getting his intelligence briefing this morning. I don't think Congress, both the House and the Senate, I think are out. But the thing that's interesting on a day like today is you do have those Christmas parties. So sometimes you'll see members of Congress lingering in town because they just happen to want to attend a party. And then the president heads to the Kennedy Center at 11:40 for the big, they'll start the pick at noon. And then he's got some executive orders he's signing in the afternoon. And then at 8 p.m., closed press. I hope he opens it up. And I might even on a Friday night, ladies and gentlemen, just go linger in the hopes that he opens this up, because Andrea Bocelli is going to give a performance in the East Room. It's currently closed press. But I got to tell you, just to hear him sing like the prayer right now at Christmas time, I think would be like, just that I don't know if you could get in this holiday spirit more than being surrounded by all the decor, the holiday decor of the White House, listening to Andrea Bocelli. I mean, that to me, that's it.
I think
Christmas
you may shed a
season
tear.
made.
Okay.
Huh?
Nice.
I thought you were going to shed a tear. Okay.
I was going to say, you get very emotional about your Christmas experiences there, Sean.
I do.
I'm with you. By the way, it is Vice Chair. Thank you both. Glad you guys are on top of Democrats.
I try to stay in touch with my Democratic.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
I'm having a great week.
But obviously there's a lot driving the agenda, Rachel.
Yeah, let's look at the rundown first, just an overview. We're going to talk ACA tax credits expiring and the clock ticking down on that. Supreme Court and the redistricting ruling. JD Vance reflecting on some Democrats that he actually likes and admires a little bit in an interview. MAGA versus MAA. This is the new acronym you're going to have to know. It came out of Axios yesterday when they did this story about Democrats leaning into Make America Affordable. Again, new strategy. We'll talk about that. And then we'll also talk about Trump's national security doctrine. But let's just start with Obamacare subsidies, because that is going to be a huge story next week. There's a deadline by the end of the week for the Senate to have a vote on extending these subsidies. So that is going to be the talk of the town. And we thought we'd take some time this morning to just sort of give folks an update. We talked at the end of the show yesterday a little bit about how the MAGA base is now starting to cry out for Republicans to extend these subsidies. Absent any bipartisan deal, they want the party to just plug their nose and swallow hard. Yes, they don't love Obamacare. They think it's a terrible system, but they're saying to allow premiums to go up on tens of millions of Americans would be, as Bright Boyle at Breitbart told me, quote, surrender for the midterms. But that is running smack into this reality of Capitol Hill in this sort of traditional Republican mindset that they are not going to do this. Just yesterday, Mike Pence was retweeting the story I wrote about MAGA wanting these subsidies extended, saying absolutely they should not be doing this. John Barrasso, who is the whip in the Senate Republican whip, saying that this is a non-starter, basically an extension, a clean extension for 3 years. And then Thune's staffers were also tweeting that this idea is, quote, wildly unserious. A couple of small updates here. Johnson, the Speaker of the House, says he's going to be dropping some sort of healthcare bill early next week. So we'll be talking a lot about that earlier in the week. But right now, the leadership has apparently not decided whether that healthcare bill will even extend.
It's only Friday. I mean,
so yeah, I guess they have the weekend to decide on this. So let's start there. Sean, 2 questions for you. Number one, I know you said earlier in the week you think the president eventually will get involved. Is he going to do that? Is he going to lean in on this? And then I also am just curious, you've been around for a while, not that I'm calling you old, but like, what is it like to be a Republican who has like blasted Obamacare for so long that is now saying we got to swallow it, just do it?
So it's funny. I literally on my panel show yesterday read the Rachael Bade reporting and to about like, here's the quote from Matt Boyle. Here's what Cernovich and others have said.
If you don't have her Substack, sign up right now.
It's the inner circle.
Yes, exactly.
But and I said to everyone, let's just there we go. Let's play this out. This sucks. We agree. Obamacare sucks. Blah blah blah. Democrats caused this, but here's where we are. Right. Let's just every one of them said, yeah, we're gonna have to eat this.
Yeah.
Right. The point is, so here's how this plays out. I look at this like a shutdown or an extending of a CR. Hell no, we're not going to do this. And then the political reality sets in. And so I think this sets out that Johnson's going to float his thing next week. If it gets a decent reaction, then who knows? I have a hard time believing that nothing is leaked out. I told you I asked Eric Van Orden this in the show. So I don't know what it is, but it clearly doesn't seem to have the contours of anything in Washington that's baked, because there's no groups that are being, I mean, Dan knows this. You would bounce this off 5 groups, made sure they're on board, none of that's happened. So I think that they send up the trial balloon next week, unless we're all shocked and it's like, wow, that's actually really good. Then I think they let the trial balloon go up, get shot down, and then the president says, all right, guys, I let you try. You couldn't do it, and now daddy's coming home, and we're going to do it my way, and it sucks, and we're going to jam it. And that's what they'll do. They'll just jam it.
Well, they've been, just one little quick thing on that, Dan, before we move on. They've been so quiet. The White House has been so quiet, and I guess they don't want to undercut Republicans' leverage.
No. They're not. They don't care about undercutting them. That's the thing. They're basically like, you go first. That's the difference.
Dan, if they do put forward a 1 or 2 year extension, could Democrats support something right now? I think their proposal is 3 years. And then the other piece of this is Republicans want to put restrictions on abortion, using any sort of services for abortion. That's obviously very important for a lot of Republicans. Could Democrats go for something like that?
Yeah, I think on the first question, yes. I think ultimately, if they were to offer a clean extension of 1 or 2 years, I think the party does kind of go for it. There'll be a few on the fringes that will vote against it, but like the majority will go for it. If they put abortion restrictions, I think even some of these fraud restrictions, I could see the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, the Congressional Black Caucus, the Progressive Caucus kind of potentially starting to splinter a little bit, depending on where some of those fraud restrictions go, because a lot of Democrats believe there isn't a lot of fraud in the program, and that it's really just an attempt to kind of backdoor close off part of it. I think from our side, the issue is a lot of Republicans, like in the Senate, it sounds like there is a fight over, should we just not offer anything? If ultimately whatever we offer isn't going to pass, why take the risk with our own base and the potential kind of humiliation of putting stuff forward that just flails and fails? So let's just take the clean, to your point, Rachel. We'll blame the Democrats, only a few people will break off. But I think Democrats, barring like the abortion thing's a no-go. There is just no way they will go for it. Part of that's just medical too. I mean, there are instances where in a hospital, life of the mother, if there was some sort of abortion ban completely with this money, they'd say, forget it.
Sean, how do you, I mean, you're a pro-lifer. You still are fine with the extension of this, even if it doesn't address.
Well, I think you have to look, I would nuance this, which is you don't need every Democrat. You need 5, 10, whatever you're going to lose on the Republican side. So
I think lose a lot on the Republican side.
Well, but I mean, my point is there's a balance. And I think Republicans, we always talk about this with the Mexico City language. And there's a certain inevitable change that comes with a change of administration in terms of abortion language and abortion funding. So look, I think at the end of the day, there is something Republicans, especially people who have been pro-life, have to at least fight for something that would put an end to subsidies. But I will tell you that, you talked about this a little before, where there is apparently an effort to kind of quell a little some of these groups. These pro-life groups, Susan B. Anthony, Concerned Women for America, Marjorie Dansfeller, Penny Nance, extremely influential in this town, especially on the right. I mean, like huge movement conservatives, and then obviously a bunch more. But those two women are really, really firm in key abortion language. Like everything would have to cross through them. There is a way I could see potentially a short-term deal where they said, guys, we got to get through this hump, 4 months, 6 months. We're just going to extend. But I think they would have to, that would be a whole negotiated deal. Like you'd have to get some kind of assurances from folks on the right that this is not anything more than a short-term thing. And maybe there's a middle ground where it's like, we can't use the money for this, but I mean,
I think the problem is if you do a 6-month extension, you are putting right into the midterms.
I know. I threw that out. Right.
Yeah, no. I'm just saying, but this is the trap for Republicans, almost anything short of 3 years. You are putting potentially abortion and healthcare front and center in the midterms. in the 2027, 2028. Like JD Vance does not want to be out there talking. Yes, I mean, this is the thing. This is why 3 years, ironically for us, the best thing ever would be a 2-year extension. Put it right back on the table 2 years from now and watch Republicans squirm. 3 years, it's like if we win, we own it. We got
to actually Matt Boyle, who I did that interview with, he was pushing for going beyond 2028.
I got to say this though, there's a difference between short-term extensions, literally like 2, 4, 5, 6 weeks, right? If you are a pro-life Republican and you're willing to sell out a 2-year deal, then why are you pro-life? Like, why are you doing this? I mean, my point is, at some point, you're just all talk, and part of the point in some of this in the movement is we've heard it all before. We've heard the excuses. I think it's one thing to say a month or 2 or something like that, or hey, there's a deal to be had here, but there's no way any pro-life Republican could look themselves in the face and said, I bought off on a deal that was a year or 2 or something like that. Like,
we got to go to the next topic, but just very quickly, Dan, how many Dems do you think would actually vote for something if it included Hyde? Like, is it less than a half dozen? Like how, like,
I mean, I have to look because so many of them
definitely got Henry Cuellar.
Yeah, I mean,
Cuellar, who just got a pardon.
I know it. Hey, Henry's pro-life. But I will say this.
Okay.
Well, one last thing I just say. Sure. The one thing about the nuance in this is there's a difference between outlawing abortion and using government funds, because it's not, that one definitely plays a little bit like there's a continuum on the abortion spectrum. Not outlawing abortion, but saying we're not going to use taxpayer funds, which is what Mexico policy, what the Hyde Amendment does, is a little bit more palatable to people on the left, because it's not like they're saying we're outlawing it. We're just not allowing taxpayer funding. I'm saying that you could probably get.
I think a lot of Democrats would disagree, but I hear.
I get it.
I think Democrats will absolutely use that to try to use that on the campaign trail, and then they'll still try to put the blame of not extending subsidies at Republicans' feet.
Listen, again, I'll leave it at this. If you're a Republican and you're not willing to fight to say taxpayer funding for abortion should be outlawed, then hang it up, brother. Put your cleats in the closet and go away.
Okay, let's talk about Supreme Court ruling. Good news for Republicans yesterday. The Supreme Court ruled 6-3 to allow Texas to use this sort of Trump-backed new congressional map for the midterms. Now, this sort of overruled the lower court ruling that said that there was an unconstitutional gerrymandering that was based on race. The Supreme Court said, no, you can do this, all good. And they also signaled that they would probably allow any challenges to California's redistricting, Democrats redistricting, to stand as well. And this sort of means as many as 5 seats in Texas that Republicans could pick up. Let's start with Dan here. Dan, like, how does this ruling sort of impact the musical chairs for Democrats in Texas, and how are they sort of taking this news?
Well, I think obviously we would have preferred that they didn't, because there is a good chance, even if it's not 5, it's 4. Like they will net seats. It also is now going to set off a scramble in Texas of Democrats potentially moving around districts, as some of these members are going to be left without a seat. Some of the Democrats are going to end up having more competitive races. This may tip Jasmine Crockett now to go run for the Senate. Like, I mean, I think she was going to do it anyway, but this may be the kind of last nail in the coffin. I think the interesting thing for the Democrats is we feel different today about this whole Texas issue than we did 4 months ago, because there is some evidence that Latinos are moving back towards us, or at least away from the GOP, meaning they may not turn out. So the predicate for these Texas seats were that the massive gains that Trump has made the last 10 years would essentially hold, maybe not completely, but mostly. If that is not the case, these seats become much more competitive, and we potentially have a chance to maybe they only pick up 2 or 3 or something of that nature. So, I think Florida we're keeping a close eye on, and of course the Supreme Court decision on the Voting Rights Act. If that were to get struck down this spring, and all those southern states redraw the map, that's where we could lose 15, 20 seats. And then it gets much harder to retake the House.
Yeah, I'm curious, Sean, do you feel at this point that this redistricting effort nationwide, was the juice worth the squeeze here? I mean, you have a lot of Hill Republicans who are very angry. Obviously, these are Republicans who are going to lose their seats potentially. And then when you redistrict in Texas, as Dan was just talking about, some of those GOP leaning seats actually might in a wave be swept up by Democrats because they're not as red as they once were. I'm just curious, like, what is your take on this as somebody who's been in party politics for a long time?
It's interesting that you asked that question. I'm glad you did, because I had this conversation with someone the other day. I think right now the jury's out. Let's just be honest. And I'll walk through this but here's the bigger question, that if it doesn't, let's say that if the juice wasn't worth the squeeze and we net 2 seats or do something, because it's not just, it's the time and the effort and the money, right? That's the other thing, is there's a lot of money that's being spent that could have been spent going on offense, and that can't be underscored. But if it doesn't yield anything, somebody was the architect of this. And this is what I think is so fascinating right now. And I was talking about this with some folks over the weekend. This wasn't without, I mean, I think Donald Trump obviously supported it, but somebody came up with this idea. And I think there's probably some pretty good guesses. but the idea is, I mean, this has cost a lot of time and effort. And at some point, if it turns out to be a dud, does somebody pay the consequence for this? Okay.
Jeez. Wow, Sean. Who was it?
Well, anyway. But let's just run through the seats. I think that Texas is interesting for 2 reasons. One, the pardon of Cuellar hasn't gotten a lot of play.
That is bonkers.
But
that he
that
did
potentially is a seat. Henry Cuellar is a. I mean, Dan likes to say the term all the time. Henry Cuellar is a strong political athlete. He works his district really hard. He's pro-life, so he plays.
So for those who don't know, Democrat indicted. Republicans were targeting him to be defeated. Or with the idea that he was indicted and all of this, and Trump pardoned him. Basically said,
Sean, have you heard anything about the thinking behind that, by the way? Like, were they hoping that he would switch parties? I know that.
I know. I haven't. The funny part is, and apparently no one that I know heard, meaning there was no heads up to the NRCC or to Mike Johnson or anything like this. Look, the funny part about this, to Dan's point, is if I were them, I would have said 2 things. One is, if you want to pardon him, let's beat him, and then you can pardon him. Because I think that President Trump has a soft spot for people who actually feel he thinks been wrongly persecuted. He identifies with them. And so I think he felt like Cuellar and his wife were targeted. But that being said, why wouldn't you have just said, hey, my understanding is the president's going to pardon you if you switch or if you retire, and not do it ahead of time? Because that took a huge talking point off the table, as Dan said, for Republicans targeting that seat. But I digress. So then I do think that Dan was right. This Latino thing, the Hispanics that we won over are a bit malleable. They want to know, what are you doing for me lately? How are you going to keep earning our vote? I think they've played this really well and as a group. And I don't think they're monolithic, but I'll just say that they're good. They're going to make every party earn their vote. And so we'll see whether that's it. But then Indiana, right now the House is going to pass it. The Senate's still a no-go. So there's no pickup there in Indiana. And then I think in Florida, I brought this up the other day. Go back and look at what happened during the last redistricting. Like, yes, Republicans control the process, but they're not unified. You had the House leader yesterday in charge of redistricting go out and be like, I'm doing it my way. Screw what the Senate president and screw what DeSantis wants.
And it will not be to the benefit of the GOP, he said, which I almost fell out of my chair.
But is that just a talking point to try to get cover?
Look, I think it was a bit of a talking point, but I think he also was basically throwing down the hammer a little, like, hey guys, I'm not rubber stamping what you want.
Exactly. That's how I read it. Yeah,
that's how I read that, which is, I'm going to say that this, but my point in saying this is,
and Mickey Sherrill in New Jersey's talking about now redistricting. I mean, and we have Spanberger in Virginia's talking about it. Like, we may pick up 1 or 2 seats now.
Right. That's why I'm saying, I think when this is all said and done, whoever opened the Pandora's box may face some consequences, because it's not going to stay silent for a long time. But you look at the net, I still think we probably net some seats.
Yeah, I agree.
But the other issue, I'm telling you, I was at the NRCC in 2000 when we did this, and members have got to be careful. The Democrats were very protective last time when I was there and did this in 2000. And I understand why. If you go from a R or a D plus 15 to a R plus D 10, that's still safe, but you got to work a little bit harder. You got to raise some more money. And I'm just telling you, if I were like, we got to be careful we don't get too greedy.
Yeah, and a lot of those members, they're not used to running real races, right?
It.
Like it's a whole different set of muscles. Yeah, you get complacent. You just you don't have to worry. And there have been, after Tuesday's special election, there were all those tweets, and we talked about a little on the show of people saying that there's been like a 15-point difference between races in 2024 and some of the specials we're seeing now. That's a huge that makes those seats really competitive. If
Well,
you're
but
already-
also, look, I got to say this, and I tweeted out to a couple people who were trying to read too much into Tennessee and everything. When you're a party, which we are, of newly, largely low propensity voters, then you're not going to see it in the specials, and that's we have to fix that problem. But the bottom line is for people to sort of analyze 4 special elections and say, "Wow, Dems are running 10 to 15 to the right," is just not true. I mean,
well, but here's where I disagree, and I wrote about this on Substack the other day. If you go from like the local races in Iowa and Ohio and Pennsylvania to the House races to the gubernatorial, it is about a 13.5% movement to Democrats in every single one of those, local, state, and federal. So to Rachel's point, the problem is you have all these members who now are on the board at the DCCC and the NRCC. And if the wave moves a little bit further, there's none of like 30. Those people now, they have not worked weekends campaigning in decades. So you're now going home to the family and saying, for the next 10 months, every weekend when I land on Thursday night or Friday afternoon, I am going to have to do events until Sunday night. You are going to have to help me. We're going to have trackers outside of our house. Every time I come out in public, there will be cameras following us around trying to check us. Talk about money. Sean, you know this well. The D-TRIP and the NRCC's budgets are now getting expanded. We're likely taking some defensive money of our frontliners that we feel a little safer of and moving it into new races. For you guys, the problem is you can only, a dollar is a dollar. You can try to raise more, but somebody's probably having their budget cut because I got to now help another frontliner that is now on the board, and the outside groups are doing the same thing. The psychology of all of this just starts building.
yeah,
And it's a problem. Yeah.
Let's move on to the next topic because we have 6 today to get through. A lot
Friday.
of news. Yeah, big news Friday. Okay, a Vance talker popped late last night. Vance sitting down with an MSNBC reporter. I think he sat down with this reporter a couple times. I'm a little jealous.
So Sean, you're always commenting on rewarding
just
the other
as a
team.
background, Henry Gomez was a longtime Ohio reporter. So
I'm an Ohio. Well, okay, I didn't cover Ohio, but I'm from Ohio. Do I get points for that?
You need to brag a little bit more.
I know. I need to.
Go Buckeyes.
Yeah. Okay.
There are rumors, by the way, that office watches our show.
And there's a couple headlines out of this. The first top one is that he downplayed this suggestion that anti-Semitism is a problem in the Republican Party. Took kind of a veiled shot at Senator Ted Cruz, who has suggested this is a big problem, especially with young conservatives. He said, I do think it's important to call this stuff out when I see it. I also, when I talk to young conservatives, I don't see some simmering anti-Semitism that's exploding. So let's just start there. Sean, what's the reaction on the right going to be today to JD saying, I shouldn't call him, the vice president, saying that anti-Semitism is not a problem with young conservatives? Are people going to be upset by this?
No. I mean, I think there's a big difference. Because again, the whole context mattered. He said, are there some bad apples in the bunch? Yeah. And he's right. There are. But I think to make it seem, again, this is like when the president talks about, housing, it's like the Democratic Party has been plagued by just literally a massive problem. And suddenly you've got a couple loud voices on the right, not questioning our strategic alliance with Israel. And suddenly we have a problem with anti-Semitism. I'm probably more with the vice president than anybody else in the sense of I think you've got to be careful that you don't keep that kind of voice in check or voices, but it is not a pervasive. In fact, we are the party that still stands with Israel, that still, calls out this kind of stuff. Yes, there are some loud voices. I'll acknowledge that, but I don't think he said anything that's going to cause any consternation at all.
It's also kind of a shadow 2028, right? Because it's not like the media per se or the Democrats who are the ones talking about this votes. It's actually Republicans like Ted Cruz who are the ones saying, look, we might have a problem we need to confront here.
Just to your point, though, about what it will do on the right. It was an NBC one-off story on a Thursday night. This wasn't like he sat down and he sat down and did a really...
sat down.
No, but he did this conversation with Matt Boyle the other day, a live event. If that came up then, and it was in the bloodstream of the right, maybe. But this is not. No one on the right is sitting down reading NBC.
Reading MSNBC.
So here's
I
what
think you're probably right about that. Go ahead, Dan.
this is what I found really fascinating. There were like kind of three things that I took out of that. One was this anti-Israel stuff. Like he can say it isn't an issue, but to your point, Rachel, this is not stirring the pot. This is the fact that if you look at polling of young Republicans, they do not think we should be involved in the Middle East. They do not want, they think too much money and too much time is going toward Israel. So he can say whatever he wants, but like it is an issue too. The fact that he did take a little bit of a shot at Cruz to me is like the shadow primary is starting a little bit between those. And the third is, and we talked about this, and we're going to get to the next topic. JD Vance said, I feel your frustration and pain on the economy. And that to me is he going to be the one? Because if Trump can't bring himself to do it, okay. But if JD is now going to be the one who goes out there, and this is actually good for JD, right? Like, I feel your pain. I know you're frustrated, Sean. Maybe he was listening to the morning meeting. He said, Biden did this over, 4 years. You got to give us, it's only been 8 months. Like literally hat tip. There are rumors some of their staff watch the show. So Sean, and nice job out there. But that to me was him waving to the hill. We hear you.
Yeah, there were a couple other bits from this interview, and that was definitely one. He talked about things he felt proud of and the things that he was most disappointed in. And the disappointed, that was the one of the things he mentioned. The other one was the inability to sort of bring to a close Ukraine versus Russia. But like he talked about feeling this frustration that is taken longer than they want to have this sort of economic turnaround that they ran on. And that's blunt honesty that we frankly haven't heard at the highest level.
Go back to the debate he had with Tim Walz, right? And I think that was the first time a lot of people saw him on a national stage. And you remember the point at which Tim Walz was talking about, I think the challenges of his son and being confronted or something like that. Yeah. And JD said, I didn't know that. I'm sorry. That's not like people forget. Like that's him.
It's a very humanizing thing.
But he's not Donald Trump. He has his own way of approaching these issues. And so I think what you're seeing is his style kind of come out a little bit more, and which is good for people who maybe just see him at a cabinet meeting or something like that. But that's him. That's, he wears his faith on his sleeve. He not just wears it. I mean, he lives it. And so for him, there is a sense of compassion and concern that's very genuine for him as he's gone through this spiritual journey. And so I think that these are helpful interviews for him. And it's interesting because people pop it out like it's somehow a new thing. But that's how when we talk about how he's going to differentiate himself from the president,
I agree.
It's not on policy, it's on style. And it's going to be a guy who's a lot more, you watch him get off the helicopter when he's going to the plane and he's dressed more casual and he's got the kids, and people, I think, look at him and say, yeah, I know who that guy is. That's my neighbor. That's the guy down the street. That's the guy from my work. Like, he has
that is why we find him more threatening. He
has that sense that people go, you know what? He's that successful family down the road that we kind of like having over at Christmas because they bring a nice bottle of wine.
Well, and a hat tip to Mark Halperin, who always used to say he's MAGA with a suburban accent. And that, to what you just described, Sean, the suburban dad makes him very formidable if he can get past this other stuff.
And by the way, other Republicans will adopt that sort of frame of talking about the affordability issue. I'm going to be writing about this in the Inner Circle later today, the newsletter I'm doing, and I just launched this week. This notion of empathizing with people, and that prices are still, some things are coming down. Yes, gas. I mean, I drove across the country for the holiday season, and I was like, whoa, gas to something. Love that. But there are still a lot of problems, and acknowledging those problems is obviously the way to go here, and it's politically smart. One other thing I want to bring up from this interview was that he gave a bit of a shout out to different Democrats that he said he respects. Bernie Sanders, Ro Khanna, Democrat from California, and Zoran Mamdani. And let me just see if I can pull this up. Let's see. Yeah, he said he said he admires Mamdani because he is clearly listening to his constituents on the affordability issue. Again, saying that that's a big problem and that people should be listening to him. Khanna, I feel like him and Khanna have introduced legislation together in the past, but Khanna, this was interesting to me because he trolls Vance on Twitter all the time. Like he's one of the Democrats that I think smartly has identified that they need to be going after the person who's most likely to be the Republican nominee in 2028 and starting to define them now. And so Kana is out there attacking Vance all the time, which politically is a smart thing to do. But he said, look, he admires them. I'm just curious, Dan, what do you make of this? Is this like game recognizing game, or what is it here?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think hat tip to Rokana, because Gavin Newsom's had, I think, by far the best 2025. Rokana's had probably the second best 2025 in that attacking Vance and Vance going back at him has kind of elevated Kana a little bit. I mean, start of the year, I didn't take him seriously whatsoever as a presidential candidate. I still think it's a long shot, but he's, made some moves. What I find interesting is you have now Trump and Vance both having said, yeah, all right, Mandani's a communist, but he's a socialist technically. But like, we got some real respect that guy ran on affordability like a laser beam. And Vance even goes on to say, New York City does have a huge affordability problem. And he's not wrong about that. And so it is fascinating that as political animals, Vance and Trump, just like when Bill Clinton recognized George W. Bush in the summer of 98, you recognize someone who's just got political talent. And I think Vance gets it.
Yeah. I mean, that's right. I mean, this is what, sometimes people get upset but it's in sports, it's the same thing. I'm not any less of a Patriots fan when I recognize that there's a good play on another team or a good quarterback that, it's like, so like, look, they I don't agree with their policies. I don't agree with their thing, but to not recognize the fact that each of those three definitely has a touch point. And I think what he also was doing is just making clear there's this thread, this through line between Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump in terms of 100%. This populist message. And Ro Khanna, I think AOC even to some extent, and Mondami all have understood like that to get that. Now, again, it runs the gamut on the spectrum, but it's that through line of forgotten men and women who feel like that they have been bowled over by a Washington, D.C. that doesn't care about them and doesn't understand them. I brought this up on my show.
2016 or 2025 right now. That sounded
I'm sure you guys have seen this, but there is this video. I played it on my show yesterday of this gentleman. He's 88 years old. He works in a supermarket. He was a GM retiree. And he got interviewed. It's gotten like, and bottom line is, he is working at 88 years old, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day in a supermarket because he had to sell his house to pay for his wife's end of care. She passed away. He gave up all of his savings to take care of her. GM, when they went through restructuring, took his pension and health care away. He's an Army veteran. But here's the beautiful thing about it. This gentleman walked up to him in the supermarket and said, hey, I hear everyone loves, dealing with you. And he said, I love being here. I get a chance to, like, I have to do this, but I want to do it with a smile on my face. People raised $1.5 million for this guy. Yeah. And there's still a sense of like populism and humanity that people want to take someone who worked hard for their life. This guy played by the rules. GM took his pension away, his health care away, and he's still out there working every day without complaining. And I think there's something inherently American about someone who says, you know what? I'm going to roll with the punches. I'm going to fight the fight. And then there's also something about American about us stepping up and saying, that's a guy who did the right thing by his family, and we want to take care of him. And I think there's people out there who say, this is someone who played by the rules and got screwed. Let's help them.
Yeah. Not a bad early Christmas present, $1.5 million. I'm going to ask Santa for that myself. Okay, let's move on. Next topic. MAA, new acronym coined by Axios last night. Democrats basically laying out this strategy that they are going to be laser focused on affordability issues come the midterms. Axios reported that Chuck Schumer in a private meeting with Democrats on Wednesday laid out this plan to form these working groups where Democrats are going to try to come up with a number of proposals on things like healthcare, grocery prices, all these different things that are still
housing and energy. Those are the four. Yep.
Yeah, pain points. What are they, Dan? Say that again.
It is healthcare, housing, energy, and food.
Okay, so they're gonna roll out these proposals. They'll run on them. So very much seizing on this issue. Dan, Democrats have been like at each other's throats for a very long time. I've written many a Democratic infighting story, but obviously nothing unifies a party like winning or
Yeah.
thinking they're going to win. So I'm just curious, what do you make of, is this sort of Schumer's like saving grace at this point? I mean, he's gotten a lot of heat from the left,
Yep.
but clearly he's trying to move past that and focus on something that can actually unify the party that is often bickering.
Yeah, no, and I've talked for the last, like, going back to like March when I was kind of always said, oh, the Democrats are a complete mess, like this is worse than it's ever been, and I always said by the end of this year, if they were still like a complete mess, I would be worried. But I go back to when Schumer ran the DSCC in 06 and Rahm was running the DCCC, and they came up with the 6 for 06. They knew they needed a proactive agenda to put before voters. This is that right now. Barring some major change, like it just affordability, right? Maha, they've got a slogan, they've got the issue, affordability, and it's going to be healthcare, housing, food, and energy. Like, just say it fast. It rolls off the tongue. This is what we're going to focus on. The challenge for Schumer now is the progressive wing is going to say we want to raise taxes, that we want, like blowout spending, and the moderates are going to. So the ability to finesse what is it in each bucket that we would do. The House and Senate have working groups. They're coordinating. The message shops are coordinating. I have no doubt they're out there in the field. They're going to start focus grouping stuff. But that's going to be, can the Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, AOC wing and the New Dem, kind of mod squad wings coalesce around something that both, Roy Cooper in North Carolina and let's say Gabe Plattner in Maine, if he were the nominee, can take, and people can just say it loud, say it proud.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you get too detailed on an agenda as in the minority, you start dividing each other, you start bickering. I'm thinking back to the Biden years when there was a big push by Republicans. I feel like in the House, I feel like it was Kevin McCarthy who said, we can't just, run against something. We have to run on something. We have to actually be for something. And Mitch McConnell came in and said, screw that.
No, we don't.
We don't have to run on anything. All we have to run on is being against Joe Biden. And so there's always these sort of different campaign strategies and ways of thinking. Sean, the president next week is going to be touring around the country. I think the first step we talked about yesterday was was it Philadelphia? I can't remember. Pennsylvania.
West Pennsylvania, I think.
Okay, somewhere in Pennsylvania. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm curious, do you think he spends next week mostly talking about what he has done, which I think a lot of Republicans would agree that message needs to be shouted loud and clear, that people need to know more about what Trump has done in terms of helping the economy, but is he going to roll out something fresh, something new, a new proposal, do you think?
I think there's definitely a possibility. Obviously, you saw the Trump savings account get rolled out. There's always I think there's always something being discussed. That being said, I mean, we've talked about it before. There's a difference between what's in the teleprompter and what he says. And so will he talk about what he's accomplished and what he wants to do? Sure. What's the talking point out of that? And I'll just, two things. Dan has heard me say this for 2 years. And I don't think this is any secret, but I've always, in my entire political career, elections come down to two things: your personal economic well-being and your personal safety well-being. Do you feel personally, in your gut, that you're doing well economically and security-wise, right? So we can call it affordability or whatever you want, but the bottom line is that has been a through line for elections in all of modern history. You vote for people if you think you're doing well, you vote for change if you don't. So I mean, I don't think any of this is new. I think how we package it and how we do it. The problem that Democrats are going to have, in my opinion, look at this James Carville op-ed that was out the other day in the New York Times, where his answer to affordability is just to make everything free college, free housing, the problem for Democrats is their default is going to be to just more government, more spending. Republicans equally are going to just say tax cuts for everything, and finding that way to talk to people. I think the president's on to something with prescription drugs. It's obviously those are the kind of things that make a difference. But I'm going to make a prediction here based on how we started this segment. I think Ma'a, is it right? Ma'a. So Ma'a, make America affordable.
Not the singer.
Yeah. Memo to Chuck Schumer and to Axios. Ma'a is the fetch of 2025. Now, if you don't remember, fetch was the word in the Legally Blonde that they tried to make stick that never won.
Oh my gosh, I love that you know this.
Yeah, well, sorry. But I'm just saying, Ma'a is fetch. It's not going to take. So Go back to the drawing board, Chucky.
Oh, wow. So now I know you're a Legally Blonde fan. This is great.
Not
we're
just the original.
We're being told that was in Mean Girls.
Oh, Mean
Oh,
Girls. Apologies. See, apparently I'm not that big
wow.
of a fan.
Wow.
I read the
so impressed
text.
with my co-host
I
right
had help. That did
now.
not
Yeah,
come.
I apologize to all of
Pop
the,
culture movies about
although I am an Alicia
strong
Silverstone
women
fan,
characters.
So.
Okay, let's talk the pipe bomb finding yesterday. So a Virginia man was arrested in charge.
According to CNN, just so you know, it was a white man.
Okay. Well, we'll get to that in a second. But just okay. So my question on this is, why did it take so long? How long? This happened January 6, 2021, and they're just now arresting the guy who put the pipe bombs at the RNC and the DNC. I mean, I remember hearing from people who worked in those headquarters who literally reconsidered their political futures and whether they wanted to stay in politics because of the fear that day when they heard about the bomb and the bomb, like it having to be like not detonated. What is the word I'm looking for? Like diffused or whatever. Yeah.
Legitimately.
How does it take 5 years to do this?
Well, look, this is the thing that's interesting to me. It's like the cocaine in the White House. Like, you know, why does it take so long? And I hope that we saw yesterday, you know, Pam Bondi, Jeanine Pirro, Dan Bongino, and Kash Patel come out and do this. And obviously they were very careful because there's going to be an ongoing prosecution. I think that's going to be a big question, not just, you know, but they were very careful because they didn't want to get too far in front of the investigation or something that might get thrown out in court because of what they said. But I'm with you. It goes, in my opinion, and I say this as obviously not, you know, I'll add this to my list of things that I don't know anything about, law enforcement. But like, it seems to me as though it wasn't a priority. Like these guys made it a priority. Dan Bongino is very clear that this was going to be something that they would solve. Kash Patel talked about it, and they made it a priority. And lo and behold, they succeeded. And that's where I think, you know, I just question whether or not that was a priority of the FBI. Maybe they spent too much time going after DEI and woke stuff instead of focusing on real criminals.
Well, I will say that this is one I'm with you, Rachel and Sean. I don't know why it took so long. I will say that people, former FBI officials who were in the department responsible for this said thousands of hours have been spent over the last few years. So I'm going to take those people's word that it was not a, you know, kind of conspiracy. I don't know why, if you're the Biden world, you wouldn't prosecute this. They tried to bomb the DNC and the RNC. It wasn't like it was, you know, somebody just targeting the NRCC and the RNC, like every Republican building. So it's a great mystery. I don't believe this was an inside job type of thing, but we're going to find out because they said that there was no new tip. There was no new lead. There was no new evidence that came out that was like, all right, now we've broken the case. They just went through the old evidence and found this person.
Right. Which makes me wonder why, to Rachel's question, I don't mean to sound cynical, but I'm sorry, after 30 years around this town, I'm cynical. And I go, because it wasn't a priority. It didn't fit the narrative. It didn't fit what they were trying to do. And look, I joked.
What do you mean it didn't fit the narrative? Explain that.
Well, look, I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's what I'm saying is that why once January 6th happened and who knows what this guy's background was. I mean, again, we'll find out more will come out, but there's just something inherently cynical about how I look at these things and say, I'm sure it didn't work for, you know, wasn't a priority because they wanted to go after a bunch of folks on the right instead. And by the way, the joke that I made, just so everyone who's, it clearly it's going around in right-leaning circles, but CNN went on and talked about how the FBI has arrested a white man. And let's just say that you must have a screen without color if you think that's the case.
Last topic for us today. Trump rolled out a national security doctrine last night, a little quietly. It's not above the fold, but something that we should discuss this morning regardless. People have sort of long conflated America first with sort of isolationism. That is not necessarily the case, especially for President Trump. And this is sort of just the latest example of that. He calls for a strong U.S. military presence in the Western Hemisphere. Among other things, which we can talk about. Let's just start there. Sean, what was your reaction to this? And do they need to be careful about putting too much of a presence in some of these other countries in the Western Hemisphere?
I think the first thing was how little it got. Like, I would have rolled this thing out a lot more presidentially. Like, and I think that speaks to that sort of was like the why, which is, why wouldn't you have stopped and paused and said, we're going to make a big deal out of this. We're going to bring I mean, again, I wonder, was it you had too much going on? But like this was ripe for an event where you have a bunch of national security types behind you, or, and get people to go out there and echo it. I was actually the rollout to me was the mystifying part more than anything.
It was so quiet.
Well, I think the interesting thing, like to me, there was three things, which is one, it takes a pretty negative view of Europe. And here we are trying to negotiate the Ukraine-Russia ending. One of the allegations is we're, not as staunchly supportive of Ukraine when we're at the table. And if you read this thing, if you're a European, you're going to get the tums this morning, because this plays on, like Sean, J.D. Vance back in March of earlier this year, when he kind of lectured the Europeans that you got to get your house in order. I think too, one of the stories that I've read kind of throughout the week is Besant and the trade team are trying to weaken, or we're trying to weaken the language about the threat of China, because they're trying to negotiate a trade deal. And so I think this was released when it was, because that is a scab within both parties. To what extent should we be all in on trying to have business ties when they are clearly our military and geopolitical foe on the chessboard? So it's fascinating. And then it talks about the importance of our own backyard, which I think most Americans would ultimately agree with. But again, to me, between Europe and China, it's an interesting document.
Well, I think the one thing about Europe that we are so, prior to this administration, we've been so afraid to call out Europe's fecklessness. Like, they have ridden our coattails on NATO. They've taken advantage of their Article 5 opportunities, letting us pay the bill. They sit back there, great at telling us what to do with our money and our troops and our forces and our strength. I don't mind it. I feel like at some point, like this idea that you can't tell your friends, everyone goes, oh my God, we're upsetting our allies. Like people have tough conversations in families, in companies, in friend groups. Like, I'm sorry, you've taken advantage of us for 40, 50 years. What's the problem with calling it out? And I do think they need to step up to themselves a little bit more. They need to stop grifting off us. I don't think that's a problem. I just think that there's, like, we lie to ourselves when we sit around and say, oh, we can't tell them. They couldn't handle the truth. I mean, I
actually think you're right on this. And I think the Democratic Party has to be really careful to not argue that, like, the status quo should hold, because I agree. I always go back to the John Kerry line in 2004. His biggest applause line was, we should be building firehouses in Ohio, not in Baghdad. And I think in 2028, if we're arguing that no, the Europeans our relationship as it was good, we want to get back to it, which is kind of what Biden argued, that is not where the country is. To your point, Sean, like, we should be allies, but they need to pay their fair share. They need to take responsibility militarily for their own backyard. We can support them, but not be the tip of the spear at all times.
A couple of other foreign policy related headlines that came out last night that I want to get your guys' take on. Admiral Bradley was on the Hill yesterday testifying about this second strike of the Venezuelan boat that was carrying drugs on September 2nd. And he testified to both Democrats and Republicans, and they have both come out and said that there was no kill order.
Yeah.
Dan, did Democrats in the media get over their skis? Get over their skis on this?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think when the news first broke and you had Republican leaders saying, hey, we want answers, I think the party was right to say, as do we, right? They had bipartisan letters go out immediately, bicameral letters. I think when unfortunately, when the kind of like, we should impeach Hegseth, this is a war crime, we did not have the facts. And the facts appear to say, Sean, hat tip to you, because you've kind of been arguing this for the last several days, like in terms of how the military works, chain of command, like this is not a bunch of guys sitting around freestyling, that the facts did not bear out the harsh allegations of Hegseth or the military. The broader question of what on earth are we doing down there? Like, is this a regional war on drugs, or are ships out of Mexico and Colombia and China with their fentanyl? Are we going to start blowing them up? Or is it like, why are we picking on Venezuela, so to speak? But I think the party did get too far out over its skis and was wrong.
I'm glad you said that, because two things.
That you were right. Yeah, sure.
No, that part. Yeah. But I think, one, you're right on what
Gonna go to his head, Dan.
Yeah, sorry.
So three things. Number one, what I hate so much about, especially in the media, because I love to pick on that, and I will admit that. But as much as Rachel talks about her bias being palace intrigue, my bias, like, the idea that it's not that. It was, people kept saying all week, Hegseth now passing the buck and he's doing this. No, it never happened in the first place. And it was like, it was not true from the jump. The Washington Post was wrong. It was wrong. He wasn't in a room making an order. It never happened. And nobody is accountable when crap like this happens. And so you have a story that comes out, Democrat leaders, and it could have been reversed. But my point is that everybody said, oh, he's got to be impeached. He's got to go. And it never happened. And then they started accusing the secretary of, well, he's going to pass the buck. And Admiral Bradley goes in and says, this is exactly what happened. And, oh, by the way, it's not just me. Here's the person to my right. Here's the person to the left. There's a lot of people in that room. Exactly. Because what I described wasn't some inside information. It's how it works. Right. And so this is what pisses me off sometimes, when it's like no one took the time to understand it. Number one. Number two is, I was shocked watching some of the Dems. I think they should have listened to you, Dan, because I was watching Jim Himes and a couple of these guys saying, like, these guys, like, these are not like the people who are getting back on the boat are narco terrorists. Like, I'm sorry that, you guys were trying to bring drugs to kill Americans into our country and we stopped you. But these are not people that I lose a wink of sleep over, right?
Well, and trying to make the process argument that there's no such thing as narco terrorists is not a winning.
Right. And that was my point, is listening to Jack Reed from Rhode Island, who is a army. I mean, like, I was like, you guys seriously do not go there. And that's what I'm saying. I think you were right. If I were them, I would have this, in terms of MAGA, there's a big, like killing boats, good. But if I were the Dems, I'd start to push the envelope a little and say, well, what are we doing in Venezuela? Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Get into the America First thing.
And that gets into the divide in the Republican Party as well.
Right.
I mean,
and it's the same trap we fell into on crime, which was, we started, it's like when you say that the narco terrorists, there's no such thing, and they're not really terrorists. It's like saying, well, crime isn't that bad. And what is happening in DC is like, yeah, okay, it's getting a little bit better. It's like, no, crime is a problem. Focus broadly. What is the strategy for the whole country? Like, why are you just sending the guard into these few cities? We just fell back into that trap of, to your point, Sean, we hate Hegseth, we hate Trump. Yeah.
But I mean, that's, again, it's like every time there's an issue, sometimes someone goes and takes it too far or misses the mark. And this is where, I mean, the Dems, who knows how they're, but I think that both right. If they just said, hey, should we be getting involved in other countries? Isn't America first? Punt it back to America first. I would have done that. Instead, getting into a debate of whether or not we should be going after narco terrorists that bring drugs to our citizens. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
I'm literally taking notes for my afternoon edition of my newsletter so I can write about some of this stuff. That's all we have for today. Is there anything else, Sean, Dan, that you guys want to flag?
Two things. First off, Sean, what do you got tonight?
Robert Cahaley, chief pollster at Trafalgar. And I think we're going to talk a lot about, I want to get his take on affordability. I actually want to, like, on Venezuela, I think there's, how much do we have to be careful on there? And obviously, how big of a deal is healthcare? So I love, Cahaley's got such an insight into the mood of the country, and particularly Republican voters. So that's going to be the big focus. And then we got some fun videos to play at the front, because, as I said, there's a lot of fun stuff.
It's Friday.
It's Friday. Yeah.
Well, and then if you love the three of us and you're like, God, I wish I could see them on the weekend, I got news for you. You can.
Oh my gosh, I forgot.
The three of us will be on with Batya on News Nation.
And Dan, it's Batya exclamation point.
Yeah, sorry. Like this, I got to go. So tune in to Batya, and you'll see the three of us as an ensemble, as a panel with
Saturday night on Batya explanation.
Yes, correct. Correct. And then just a reminder, sign up for Rachel's newsletter if you have not. Sounds like she's going to have another great thing. And then just thank you all for your continued feedback. This was our first week together. Feels like it was, a year, but this was our first full week together. We continue to make tweaks. And obviously when we launch here on Monday, January 5th, it'll be a more refined product. But, you know, we appreciate that your feedback, what you like, what you don't like.
By the way, real quick,
have some grace.
I get in some questions of this. If you want to share if you go to thedchuddle.com, there's a sign up there, and we will keep you informed of. Obviously, we're going to be across all platforms. We're growing, and so
yes, we'll have a podcast. Yep, because people have asked about a podcast. We will be available on a podcast.
Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. as well. Yeah,
starting
in January.
Starting in January. So again, thank you for having a little bit of grace and understanding as we do this. But thank you for a great first week. Rachel, great job. Your first week here. And so
happy to be here.
And everyone have a great weekend, and we will see you on Monday.
Yeah, putting the link in the chat too.